We're gonna head into our warm-up, which will be consisting of our kneeling Cossack squat, getting inside of the hips and the inner thigh. We're gonna do some shin box mobility, warming up the hips, moving back and forth side to side, and then as well as some shoulder cars, giving it some attention and work to our shoulders as well. We're gonna go through a 10 exercise circuit, doing our rotating lunges, side lunge, squat holds, a deep squat hold, a rotating lizard, shoulder taps, eccentric push-ups, plank to pike, squat extensions, and bent over tees. That sounds like a lot, but we're going to disperse it out with plenty of time. So we'll just be able to do, we'll go through them one at a time, nice and even, and then we'll get some good, long, focused time at the end to do our stretching, which will be a thread the needle stretch, child's pose, a pigeon stretch, and then doing some single leg hamstring work and working into the hips to finish things off. So the first thing that we're going to do to start with our warm up is getting down onto one knee and opening our foot out to the side, getting our hips and our shoulders nice and square facing forward. And we're just going to lunge out to the side, getting a nice stretch through the inside of the hip and driving back up. Lunging out to the side, getting that stretch into the hip, keeping those shoulders square, torso nice and tall, opening up the inside of that hip there. One more on this side, really trying to sink those hips down in towards the ankle. Landed down on the ground. Switching sides, getting our other foot out, pointing our hips forward, keeping them nice and square, and lunging out to the side, getting a nice stretch through the hip, driving back out, going side to side, back and forth. Really trying to work into those hips down at the bottom, getting a nice deep stretch. And driving back up. Good. Next up, we're going to do our shin box mobility. So sitting down onto the ground, we're going to get both of our legs at 90 degrees here. So one out in front of us like so, one out to the side. And we're going to lean forward, lower down, in our chest down towards the shin, and twist back the other direction, stretching through the front of that hip, and then twisting and folding forward, lowering that chest down to the shin and the knee, and reaching back, twisting back towards that heel, coming up, switching our legs over, and dropping down to the other side. So that now that back leg is now our forward leg, and we're lowering the chest down to the shin and reaching, twisting back, twisting through that hip and thigh, and folding forward, stretching out that outside hip, and twisting back. One more forward, nice big stretch, and coming back up, feeling nice and loose through the hips there. We're going to go into our shoulder cars. So getting both of our hands and knees down onto the ground. First thing we're going to do is extend one hand out, thumb pointed up to the ceiling, coming up high, opening our hand up to the outside and coming back down towards the hip, sliding that hand back underneath the shoulder. Now extending back towards the knee and the hip. As that hand comes up, palm opens and coming around, bringing the palm back inwards. Switching hands, coming up forward, reaching up and behind, flipping around and bringing that hand back down, extending back towards the knee and the hip, coming up, over, and around. Good. Next up, we're going to head into our workout portion here. So first thing that we're going to do is going to be our rotating lunges. So here we're going to get a little bit of a staggered stance. So one foot just slightly in front of the other. We're going to start with our knees bent slightly, keeping our belly button sucked into the spine. We're going to drop our hips down, loading this forward leg and twisting across and standing back up. So this back foot is kind of being used as a stabilizer and a kickstand. And we're really trying to load all that weight onto this forward planted leg and drop those hips down. So I'm scooting those hips back, that knee's coming forward. I'm twisting across the knee as I'm lowering down and driving up. Shifting hips back, knees going forward, keeping that weight over the middle of the foot, and switching legs. Getting our little kickstand in the back, staggered stance, dropping the weight down, and driving up. Getting a nice, even pace. Slow down, feeling that load and the twist. And then driving back up. And done. Good. Next up, we have our side lunge. So we're going to get our feet spread out to the side. Nice big step apart from each other. From here, we're going to shift our weight over to one leg, bending that knee and dropping the hips, keeping that weight over the middle of the foot and driving back up. Switching to the other side. Nice even pace, getting a little bit of a lateral load from side to side. Keeping that belly button sucked into the spine, torso nice and tall. Driving from one side to the other. A couple more here. And done. Very good. All right. Next up, we've got 3 squat holds. So we're going to start with our feet about hip width apart. Now, as we get into our squat, I want you guys to think about driving these hips back and pulling the knees forward at the same time. So that's how we really get into a good squat posture, is driving those hips back and letting those knees come forward. Now we're sitting into our squat, holding for about 10 seconds, keeping that chest up, belly button sucked into spine, and driving back up. Standing nice and tall, getting a little rest through the legs, and driving those hips back, pulling the knees forward, lowering down, sucking that belly button into spine. You can extend the hands out. That helps me keep my chest up and counter forward, and driving back up. We've got one more. Going to drive those hips back, knees coming forward, dropping the hips down, weight over the middle of the foot. Almost there, and driving back up. Nice and easy. Good. Next up, we're going to get into a deep squat. So this is going to be stretching out the inside of the hips. We want to get our feet about 1 step outside of hip width. So I got my hips lined up, took 1 step out to each side. And from here, I'm going to lower my hips down, bring my hands to the floor, and position my elbows inside of the knee. After that, I'm just going to lean forward so that I'm slightly bringing some weight from the knees onto the elbows, and I'm starting to get a stretch through the hips there. If you're starting to feel like there isn't much, try and get your feet a little bit wider and work back into that leaning forward position so that you can get your elbows spreading those knees apart, feeling a stretch through the inside of the hips there. We're going to sit here for a few more seconds. Nice big stretch, getting those hips open, sitting in that tension. And pushing up off the hands and extending back up. Good. Getting a little shake out through the hips. Get some contraction back in there and feeling loose. All right. Next one we're doing is going to be our rotating lizard. So coming into a big, wide split stance, bringing one knee down to start. We're going to get our hands down to the floor and drive our back knee up. Once we get our knee up, we're going to lunge our hips forward, shifting them forward, getting a nice big stretch through the hips. And we're going to take our inside hand and rotate it up towards the ceiling. Getting a nice pose at the top, coming down, driving those hips back up, extending the foot back, switching feet, bringing the other one forward, shifting the hips down as we twist up towards the ceiling. Bringing that knee back up and switching. Nice even pace. You want to hold up at the top for about 3 to 5 seconds. Getting a nice twist through the back. And we'll do one more on each side. Finishing up on this one. Very good. Bringing that knee down and finishing out. Good. Next up, we're going to do our shoulder taps. So you can do these with your knees down or with your knees up off the ground. But you're going to bring your hands to the floor, bring your shoulders over your hands, lock out the elbows. You're either going to stay on your knees or extend your toes back, bringing those knees up, alternating opposite hand to shoulder. Nice, even, slow pace. Really giving your shoulder the chance to stabilize. We're not going for speed, but we're going for stability and control. Almost there, a couple more seconds. Keep it up. Almost done. And rest. Good. Shaking out the shoulders, getting nice and loose, letting things fly out. We're going to head into our eccentric push-ups here. So, same thing. These can either be done with the knees down or with the feet extended out, but we're going to get our hands back into that same position, just outside of the chest, directly below the shoulder. We're going to suck our belly button to spine, getting our hips nice and high so we have a flat back, and lowering our chest down, keeping our elbows pinned. We're going to lower our chest down to the ground and drive up, nice and slow. The eccentrics here are focusing on our downward phase. So as we go down, you want to go nice and slow. Really feel those muscles, all the little fibers starting to work there, creating that mind-body connection through the movement. Nice, even drive. We're just going to do a couple here, but I want them to be nice and focused. Sucking that belly button to spine, using that core, working all together. and done. Very good. All right, next up, we're gonna do our plank to pike. So getting our forearms down to the ground, we're gonna start in a plank position, extending the feet back, getting the knees up. From here, we're gonna bring one hand up, other hand up, and walk our toes to the hands. Getting a nice stretch from the back, driving the hands through the shoulders, getting our hips up, and walking back, bringing those shoulders over the hands, and lowering back down. Nice and even, coming back up, walking those toes forward, getting to our pike, and extending back down, lowering into our plank. We got one more, coming up, extending those toes back forward, and stepping back, lowering back down into our plank. All right. Nice job. Good little shoulder blast there. Getting some nice stability and control. A little bit of burning through the upper body. Gotta love it. The next thing we're gonna do is gonna be our squat extensions. So we're gonna start kind of connecting all of it together here, using all of our joints in one motion. So we're going to lower ourselves down by driving the hips back, bringing those knees forward, getting nice and low, getting down to the bottom, and extending all the way up, raising our hands up overhead, and popping up onto our tippy toes at the top of our squat. So squatting down, and like you would be jumping up for a rebound in basketball, you're going to extend all the way up, reaching those fingertips up above the head. We got a couple more here. Nice even pace, keeping that weight over the middle of the foot. Scooting those hips back, knees come forward. Almost there. And done. Good. Last thing we're going to do is just a little bit of back work. We're going to do our bent over tees, and then we're going to head into our nice stretch session. So for this one, we're going to position our feet right about hip width, get into a little bit of a squat, and lower our chest over the floor. Hands are going to come forward in front of the chest. And from here, we're just going to bring our fingertips directly out to the side, holding at the top, and lowering back down. Coming up, getting a nice hold, trying to squeeze those shoulder blades together. An interesting cue I always hear and try and use is if you imagine you got an orange in the middle of your back, you're trying to squeeze all the juice out of that orange by pinching your shoulder blades together. Flying out wide, pulling those shoulders back, keeping them nice and low, away from the ears. Couple more. And done. Very good. All right, we're gonna head into our stretching portion of the rest of our session here. So getting down onto our hands and knees, we're gonna start with our thread the needle stretch. So bringing one hand underneath and through, we're gonna drop that shoulder down to the ground, twisting our torso to extend the fingertips out to the side. Getting a nice stretch through the back of the shoulder. And rotating up, twisting through the spine and the lower back. Switching sides, getting that arm underneath and through, dropping the shoulder down, getting a nice big stretch and twist. through the back. And twisting up, bringing that fingertip all the way to the ceiling and dropping down. We're gonna go one more on each side, dropping our arm through, getting a nice twist, stretching through the shoulder. And coming back up, twisting, extending those fingertips to the sky. Dropping our other hand down, getting a nice twist, and stretching through the shoulder. Coming back up, twisting, and extending up to the sky. Good. Next one we're going to do is going to be a simple child's pose. So, getting our hands extended out in front into this quadruped position. We are going to rock our heels back hips back toward the heels, keeping the hands extended out front. Trying to elongate the back and stretch out the shoulders, dropping those hips towards the heels. Coming back up, getting a nice little twist through the spine, a couple of shoulder circles, and heading into our pigeon pose. So we're going to extend one leg forward like we had in that shin box, except our back leg is now going to extend backwards as we sit up onto this front shin. So I'm sitting forward, leaning onto this shin, and I'm going to get one forearm down to the ground as I slowly extend that back foot behind me. From here, I'm just trying to drop my chest down towards my shin and really stretch out the outside of that hip. Getting nice deep breaths. Feeling that tension and big stretch through the outside. Dropping those hips and lowering that chest. And coming back up and switching legs. Bringing our other shin forward. Lowering it down to the ground and extending that leg back behind as we pop up and extend that leg back, finding that sweet spot to stretch on the back side of that hip there. Breathing in and out through the nose. Big deep breaths. Trying to lower that chest down towards the ground. And sitting back, extending the legs both forward. We're going to get into our last stretch here, which will just be a seated single leg hamstring stretch. So we're going to bring one foot into the inside of our hips, fold it back so that my heel is in on my inner thigh. And we're going to reach out towards the opposite foot, trying to curl those toes back towards us, getting a nice long stretch.
through the hamstring here. I've also found that if you're starting not to feel much here, with one hand, you can get a little crossover. And here you start to get into that lower back a little bit more. And you can get a little bit more tension on the hamstring if you find it. And relaxing out, switching feet, getting our other leg extended out, bringing that foot in and reaching out to the side. And finally, coming out of our stretch, finishing up our session. Thank you guys so much for hopping in. Truly appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed our class today. Keep up all the good work, the consistency, and hard work. Talk to you all later.
Thanks, Quinn. See ya.